Hello, everyone. As you can see, this is not a typical podcast episode of Techlitical. Today, we are going to have a brief discussion about something that's been stirring up debate on Twitter. I'm your host, Ayush, for today, and with me, I have Dhiraj.
Hello everyone, this is Dhiraj.
And I have Yaswant with me.
Hello everybody, my name is Yaswant Narayan.
And today, we're going to talk about the debate that's been stirring up Twitter about the fact that Hacktoberfest is live. And there has been a lot of spammy contributions going on apparently to a lot of the repositories that are available as part of Hacktoberfest for you to contribute. So let's get started. The debate itself started from the fact that people, or let's say one particular individual, as per DigitalOcean in their update, they found that there was this person who had a large following, and he posted a video quoting free ways to earn a t-shirt, and then he demoed a certain way to make a PR. Now in that PR he just makes a few changes to the readme files and some sort of documentation, and then he says that if you make 4 of those, essentially you will get a free t-shirt from DigitalOcean. Now that stirred up a lot of people, and there were a lot of people who ended up contributing to all sorts of different repositories with spam contribution, making random changes of like changing words or adding bullet points, changing ordered lists to unordered lists or something like that. Essentially spamming the maintainers who put in their hard time from taking their time out of their lives, personal lives for the most part, and contribute to project that helps other developers out there in the world. Now this obviously made them a bit cranky, because they wouldn't want to have to like close all sort of worthless PRs, right? So today we're going to discuss about that, and we will see what DigitalOcean has done to ensure that some sort of it, or it is bogged down to the minimum least possible extent that is possible. We will talk about a few examples that you can like maybe take inspiration from, but not the right. I mean, there's no one right way to contribute, obviously. But we would like give you some brief examples where you can see what kind of contributions do make sense. And at the end, we'll just close the discussion with our opinions and the thoughts on the debate. So when this happened, and it started a lot of debate on Twitter and other social media platforms as well, obviously, what DigitalOcean did was it took notice, and it ended up releasing a set of updates to the guidelines that it always had. So initially what you had to do was make 4 PRs, which are pull requests or essentially code changes to a certain application or repository on GitHub. But this time onwards, what they've done is that maintainers of the repositories and those applications can opt in or opt out of being part of Hacktoberfest, essentially making a stop to the worthless contributions that were being spammed with, right? And for this, they have like given you a set of guidelines, which you can find it on this link, which we will include in the video's description, such that you have to now add a topic of Hacktoberfest. If you see this particular line, where you have to add a topic of Hacktoberfest to your repository that you want to be a part of GitHub and DigitalOcean's Hacktoberfest, and hence only then those contributions will count towards getting that t-shirt that people so crave about. So going forward, essentially the criteria as defined by now DigitalOcean is that if the submitted PR is onto a repo that has the topic of Hacktoberfest, and it's between the month of October, which is the period that Hacktoberfest goes on for, the PR needs to be merged or approved, or at least be labeled as Hacktoberfest-accepted by the maintainer. Only if along with the fact that the repository needs to be of the topic Hacktoberfest and in the month of October, these 3 conditions needs to be met, one of these conditions at least. So if it's merged, as in it becomes part of the code base of that particular application, you are good, that PR is fine. If the PR labeled is not accepted yet, but it has been labeled that maybe at some point it will be taken up in the application, or the PR has been approved but it's yet to be put into the cycle of getting or included into the application or application code, then in all these 3 cases, your PR is legit, or legit in the sense that the guidelines that are defined by DigitalOcean. So because of this, maintainers don't necessarily have to add or opt out of DigitalOcean's Hacktoberfest. They can just classify which PRs are spam and which they feel are genuine enough, and then just ignore the rest, right? So that's it. But also towards the extent of contributions, DigitalOcean also has released a few new guidelines in a way that they did used to ban people, and they did used to stop sending t-shirts to people who they figured out or were flagged as making spammy contributions. This time they've extended that banning system to, if you are flagged multiple times or they see that you're essentially just making spam contributions or making spam PRs, they will ban you from all future Hacktoberfest, not just this one. And as well as the fact that for all the years prior to this one, the review period for all the PRs was 7 days, which they've extended to now 14 days, so that they have a little bit more time to figure out which contributions are legit and which contributions are not. And this essentially is DigitalOcean's response to something that's been a problem for all sorts of maintainers across the globe, because every year DigitalOcean, especially I've seen it personally in a lot of juniors, batchmates, as well as seniors, that all they want is the t-shirt, which is, I don't think it's the right motivation. DigitalOcean provide these t-shirts in exchange for you to be active in the open source community, not as it's a reward. It's not a freebie for you, right? So we'll come back to this later. Let's start with the fact, let's take a look at a few actual legit contributions. So Yaswant, why don't you walk us through some legit contributions?
Hey guys, so Ayush was talking about a legit pull request, and I would say for a legit pull request, there are two kind of things that people usually raise pull requests for. One is for fixing an issue, and another is for adding a feature to a project. And over here you can see where the pointer is located. There is the feature label over here. This clearly says that this guy has added a feature to this repository in Force Asia organization. And in the pull request description, as you can see, there are a lot of screenshots so that the reviewers can see what feature that is actually like visually how it looks like. Since it's a front-end project, it's great to add some screenshots so that we know what's happening there. And then there are a few checklists. That's the pull request guidelines that this repository has. And below that, there is this code coverage report, because this repository, Force Asia is very it's a great organization. They have their code quality, and also they have tests written for their repositories. And so when you're giving a pull request, you have to write tests and stuff, and we get the code coverage. And below that, we have these maintainers talking about this pull request. They give some points to it, like if there's any improvements or something. And excuse me. And below that, people also give code comments. Like they go through your pull request and they give you certain comments, maybe which you should fix and update the pull request so that it matches the quality of code that already exists. And so looking at all these things, one might think like, oh my god, so maybe I should be like writing a lot of code because it's a big feature or something. So it's not about the lines of code, it's about the impact of the code that you are writing. So over here, as you can see, he has added 84 lines and only removed 7 lines. If you can look at what's happening here, it's like there was not a lot of code which was added. It was a very little contribution, but then it added an entire section to a session page, as the title reads. So this is not a very big PR, but it's an impactful PR. So this is something that you guys should look at if you're trying to contribute to it. So I understand it's always a bit hard to find a good issue or a feature for you to contribute on. That is why there is this website called goodfirstissue.dev. We'll put the link in the description as well, so you can check it out. It's easy for any beginners to look at some easy issues or easy features that repositories are looking for. And it's a win-win situation where you can start out by giving small PRs, which is impactful as well, and that open source community is also getting contributions, and the projects are well maintained as well. And talking about all these things, like you can also think about contributing to the documentation and stuff, which Dhiraj will be talking about now.
Thanks, Yashwant, for passing on. So let me first tell you about the importance of keeping documentation in a project. So it helps you remember your goals. Then it also highlights some important events, and it makes the works easy. And it also enables us to focus on details. So maintaining documentation in project, it helps you remember every minute detail about your project, such as your mission, your vision, your goals, your objective, and the processes to be used. And most important of all, it helps you measure your progress on a regular basis. It also helps you know the causes of your poor performance and stuffs. So many of you might be thinking like, updating something in README, like Ayush said, like changing from bullet points to making it a numbered, or adding Oxford comma. So that is not an actual contribution, or to be more specific, a legit contribution. So contributions should be such like they create an impact. So one thing, it can be like it makes the documentation more easier, or it adds certain bits of information which helps in using that tool, or it improves the you can say some software engineering diagrams, suppose the flow charts or the data flow diagrams or the high level architectural diagrams. So these are the documentation changes that will be very legit. So I'll walk you through one of the documentation changes in Google Chrome repository. So in this, what you can see is it's a very small change, but it has an impact. So as you can see, it's like previously it was written, please note that you can only extend from Lighthouse default using the extends property, but it has been changed to please note that the extends property only supports extensions. So although it's a small change, but it has an impact. So this is how documentation change can be. But many of you might be thinking that I don't want to make these kind of changes to earn a t-shirt. So yeah, you can keep it for now. You can make these changes in November maybe, and make some other contributions to earn your t-shirt. So I'll pass on to Ayush to give you more details on the spam contributions and how you can improve on that.
So like Dhiraj talked about and Yaswant talked about, we saw what a code contribution looks like, and for the most part you would understand. I mean, if you're contributing code, then you probably know what a good contribution should look like. The issue lies with the fact that people think just adding a few comments in code or the readme bit that Dhiraj talked about is also a legit contribution. I personally am of the opinion that documentation is obviously pretty damn important, in the fact that it allows you to understand the tool that or an application that you're about to use, install, or contribute to, right? And that makes the documentation essentially the manual for you to understand, or like make a choice on what features that are being there. I mean, even if it's not an issue on the GitHub repository, at times people put in to-do lists on the readme. So that's also a place where you can understand, hey, this is one feature that I can probably work on for this particular application. And talking about the impact bit that both Yashwant and Dhiraj talked about, as the documentation example that Dhiraj showed you did not have a lot of lines of change. It was essentially changing some way the words were used, but if you would have noticed, it was approved by the maintainer of that repository, at least one of the maintainers of the repository, which goes to show you that even documentation changes are legit. And you should not shy away from the fact that writing documentation is not bad. It's like documentation coexists with all of your applications, and the way or the right kind of software developer knows the importance of documentation. I mean, all of us, if we have ever encountered a technology that we found fascinating, but we're having a hard time trying to use it because the documentation was not up to the mark, we know how important it is, right? Or at least at some point in our dev journeys, or in any sort of journeys, actually, we have faced this issue at some point, and we know how important or how happy we feel when the documentation is so clear that it's just a matter of copy pasting to get something up and running. So that's what we mean when we say documentation contributions. So even if it's updating the README, it should have some certain sort of impact on the application, because you're helping other people who will come and look at that repository understand what's going on here for that particular application. So again, this is all my personal opinion, and I think Dhiraj and Yaswant would agree, but then obviously other people can have their own opinions about whether documentation contributions are that important or not. That's up to the debate to others. Coming back to the fact that what Dhiraj said, that whether or not should we do this right now. So again, I would think that documentation is important. So maybe if I was maintaining a repository and if someone made like a really nice documentation with diagrams and certain stuff of compiling my applications from scratch, building it up, packaging it, distributing it, or maybe just using it, I would be happy to accept that as a legit PR. But I understand that a lot of repositories will not want to have that as their main source of contribution. So obviously, like as again Dhiraj said, you can hold those PRs off, because again, I wouldn't say that any maintainer would turn down a good documentation PR, but maybe that can wait till November. And for now, you can focus on code contribution as per your preferences and as well as the repositories that you're contributing to. On the end notes, I would kind of like to sum everything up that the t-shirt is not meant to be free. I believe that the media thing that started it all, from the guy who posted that video or whatever, it kind of had a title of, I think, get free swag or something like that. I'm not exactly sure of the exact title, but I would want to clear off the fact that we know that it's, I mean, like the legit people do know that it's not a free t-shirt. It's not meant to be a freebie. DigitalOcean gives you a t-shirt in exchange for you investing your time out of your own, I mean, life, right? Outside of your work hours for the most part, to contribute to some open source project that other developers are going to use around the world. And it's that impact that DigitalOcean is trying to promote or reward. And by the definition of reward, it is in exchange for some deed, and typically a good deed, right? So from that fact, we should know that that contributions are more worthwhile than just a t-shirt that you get from DigitalOcean. This is a wonderful initiative from DigitalOcean which has been going on for years, which promotes open source development. But we should also understand that the t-shirt would at some point be torn off. The t-shirts would go bad. But once you have done a legit contribution to a repository, those commits, your codes, your lines, your effort, and your time investment stays as part of that repository forever, because the Git history, even if the code changes, will always have you listed there as a contributor, right? So we should all focus on the fact that it's a contribution that's worthwhile, and DigitalOcean is doing really a nice deed of promoting that effort and time that people spend into developing open source project, rather than thinking that DigitalOcean should be fooled and we can get a free t-shirt out of those guys, because that's not what they're after. I mean, DigitalOcean doesn't really care about the fact that if some people get a free t-shirt. What they're trying to do is promote the open source community, and that's a wonderful initiative in my opinion. And coming to this year specifically, this year, if you are, if you want, you also have the option to forego the t-shirt and plant a tree instead. So this year, not only you can do good by contributing to open source application, but also to the environment by planting a tree. So on that thought, I'll leave you guys, and this has been a wonderful discussion amongst me, Yaswant, and Dhiraj. See you guys next time. Thanks.